So, one of the questions that arises when I speak about why it's important for all of us to mother ourselves and why self mothering is important, even for those without a mother, and how all of us should learn the practice of self mothering. The question that arises is, okay, then what's the point of conscious parenting? What's the point of gentle parenting if our kids are still going to have to mother themselves, if our kids are still going to have to reparent themselves? What is the point? And the point is, your kids will not be spared from the human condition. They are not going to be spared from the heartbreak, from the rejection, maybe from even the abuse or the betrayal that comes with existing with other human beings. And they need to be able to navigate that, or they need to be able to process that trauma once it happens to them. And if it happens to them, when it happens to them, because most of us are going to experience some form of betrayal, some form of rejection, some form of heartbreak. The heartbreaks are going to happen to everybody, whether you had a good childhood or not. And what self mothering helps you with is the tools and having the practice of knowing what to do when certain situations arise. And oftentimes, when you have a great childhood, and there's an abundance of love at home, there's an abundance of affirmations, you are seen, you're celebrated, and you are heard. What happens is you do not know how to deal with shame because it's not something that you have had to deal with. It's not something that it's present in your home. You are getting the love that you need. So you are not developing beliefs such as I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, I'm a burden. And usually what happens is you become an adult and you date someone and they call you clingy because you want reassurance and you want quality time and you don't understand how to deal with the situation because in your life as a child, love was abundant and asking for love was not something that was frowned upon. It was not something that you'd be shamed for. But here you are as an adult that is being shamed for needing love, right? And asking for it. Or you find someone who just is not trustworthy, who betrays your trust, or you find someone that takes advantage of your generosity. And here you are realizing that there's a lot of people that are takers. Now you have to set boundaries, not just in the way that you used to set them when you were a child and with people that hear you. Now you are setting boundaries with people that do not hear you. You are setting boundaries with people that will not respect those boundaries. How do you navigate that world? Right now as an adult. So it's important that all of us learn the self mothering practice because it helps us navigate the world. And some of these things, in as much as our parents may have loved us, in as much as you might have had a great childhood, they could not teach you everything. They couldn't. And part of the parenting, the mothering is to give you the tools that you will use later on in life. And that is just what self-mothering is. Having those tools to now nurture yourself in the absence of the primary caregivers who were responsible for that when you were a child. And now you don't have the tools to deal with shame. You don't have the tools to deal with the toxic guilt. You don't have the tools to deal with the new fears that are arising. You don't have the tools to deal with the sort of anger that you now feel as a result of the betrayal that you are experiencing perhaps in your personal life or at work or whatever. You do not have the tools on how to process and unpack and deal with those emotions as they arise in the moment. Right, because those things were not present when you were a child. You had a great childhood. And I don't want to say you had a childhood that did not prepare you for the future because that's not true. Your parents cannot teach you everything. They cannot. There's some things that we have to learn as adults. But the difference between you, the person that had a great childhood, and the rest of us who didn't, is that for some of us, for us with a mother wound, we have to go back. Like we have to now reparent our inner child, and we have to process the emotions that we did not have capacity to process when we were children, and unpack those experiences that we did not have capacity to unpack as children. And the advantage that you have as someone that had a great childhood is that you are unpacking this in the moment. Your system is not overloaded. You are not dealing with hundreds of experiences that are all shame based, that now are triggered every single time you experience a situation where you experience shame. Unlike us, you don't have to go back and process each and every experience that you had as a child that was shame based or guilt based and have to detangle yourself from your mother. You don't have to do all of those other things. So you have an advantage. Life is happening to you as it should, because life happens to everybody. But your advantage is that you probably have more capacity than someone with childhood trauma. So your self-mothering journey, now learning the tools that may have not gotten from your mother or from your dad, from your caregivers, is that your work is not a lot. It really isn't. Because I've met a couple of people who said to me, especially women, who've said to me, I remember at my last book discussion, no, it wasn't my last book discussion, at a book discussion, I think in Bryanston, and a lady came up to me and said, I was listening to you speak, and I cannot relate to any of the things that you went through, but I have the shame. I have the shame that I'm not lovable. I have the shame that I'm a burden. And this comes from someone that I'm dating who does not validate me, who does not reassure me, who calls me clingy. Why is it that even with a great childhood and having been loved the way that I have been loved, that I chose someone like this, right? And I could hear the shame in their voice, that they blame themselves for having given this person access, for having loved this person who is now causing them trauma, because trauma changes the chemistry in your brain even as an adult, right? So they are blaming themselves and they're saying, how could I have let this happen? Having had the childhood that I had, aren't I supposed to be able to choose a life partner that is kind because I had kind parents? Not necessarily. Oftentimes, because you've not had the experience of abusers, you don't know the tactics. You don't know. You are happy and open and letting people in who aren't even supposed to get closer to you, but you are learning now that not everyone comes from a great home. Not everyone has the capacity to love other people. Not everyone is open enough to offer love and to receive it. And those people exist. And you have to now set the boundaries with those kind of people and process the shame that you are now developing as a result of that relationship. But there's nothing particularly wrong with you, right? It just means, like the rest of us, you now have to start mothering yourself, but you are going to start here. You don't have a lot of work like the rest of us. When you don't have childhood trauma, it's easy for you to rise to the occasion. It's easy for you to rise to the occasion. I've seen actually that most people with fairly good childhoods are the people that actually go to therapy because one, they know that they need support. It's easy for them to open up to a community and seek help. Unlike people who with childhood trauma, who would start being in denial, which is something that served them when they were children, or they would just suppress and numb and use some form of coping mechanism that is not healthy because they've learned young that they need to numb their emotions. So people who had good childhoods or fairly good childhoods are most likely going to seek help, I'm most likely going to be the ones to say, hey, I need to talk to someone, get a therapist, or even allow their community to be of support to them, which is something kids with childhood trauma don't do. I mean, I write in my book about how I went to therapy when I was in varsity, and in as much as it was helping, it was so easy for me to relapse. It was so easy for me to just go back into my old habits, to drink a lot, to numb in other ways that were not healthy, because that was the default for me. So the great thing about people without childhood trauma is that their default is not unhealthy habits. It's not. It's not to numb in some way. It's not to be in denial. It's not to suppress their emotions. It's often to reach out. And that is the advantage. So when we say everyone needs self mothering, and we say everyone needs to have a practice of parenting themselves, we are not saying, oh, that it just means that everyone could just, like, all of us should just have childhood trauma. There's no point to all of this. There's no point to trying as parents to be conscious in our parenting and to prioritize connection with our children, because they're just gonna, that is the whole point, right? You give them the tools that are healthy that they can use as adults, but as an individual, as a human being, you're not going to be able to teach them everything. And it's actually a good thing that you were able to shield them from certain experiences, but they are going to rise to the occasion. And I think that is a misconception, is that people think, oh, if I'm not toughening up these kids, if I'm not roughing them up and teaching them how to, like, navigate abusive environments by being their biggest, their abuser, is that they're going to grow up and become adults who don't know how to navigate those environments. They're going to become adults who don't know how to um defend themselves. And that's not true. They are going to rise to the occasion. They will. And you need to trust that they will. Because most parents operate from this place of fear of their kids becoming failures, of their kids becoming spoiled. I know people who say things like, oh, you have to not give them um a lot of the things that they need, or even some of the things that they want, because they're going to be spoiled and they're not going to be successful, make them suffer, and all of those things. And I'm like, we studied with people who come from uh wealthy families, kids who had cars when they were 16, good cars, who went to great schools, who never lacked for anything, who were just as ambitious, who were just as committed, and were working just as hard as the rest of us. They didn't need to suffer for them to show up for themselves. These kids, your kids that you are parenting, gently and consciously, are going to rise to the occasion. There's no need to make them suffer in the now. Life is going to happen to them. The heartbreak is coming. The betrayals are coming, the rejection is coming. That is going to happen on its own. It doesn't need you to be a catalyst for it. They will rise to the occasion and they will learn. The hope is that you have been such a constant support system in their life, that they know that when bad things happen to them, they should reach out to their community for to help them, which is something the rest of us who have childhood trauma struggle with. Our parents were our abusers and have taught us that we cannot rely on anyone. So when bad things happen to us, we most likely stay in those situations much, much longer, because we do not trust in anyone to be of help to us. We don't know how to ask for help. We don't know how to express our emotions. We don't even know how to name these emotions. So childhood trauma is not helpful to anybody. is not helpful to your children, and it's not preparing them for some future. Most times it's just setting them up for failure and priming them for abuse in adulthood. And that's not what we're trying to do here. So when we say that self-mothering is important for everyone, we're not negating the importance of gentle parenting, of conscious parenting. We're simply saying, even as an adult, you're going to need the tools that you learned as a child. And if you did not learn them as a child, because those scenarios or those situations did not exist in your childhood, you need to learn the practice now so that you can navigate the world as someone who's equipped. We're not saying childhood trauma is important, right? So everyone needs a self-mothering practice that help them navigate the world, that navigate for them to navigate their career, their personal life, and their community, and just their emotional self, because that's very, very important. So for those of you that are saying, I relate. I had a great childhood, but I find myself struggling with certain things, or I had a really terrible childhood and I do not know what to do. I have a self mothering care practice course that is 8 weeks, and you can take that independently, or you can even book coaching with me, and we can start your journey of healing your mother wound. All you have to do is send me a DM or send me an email at templebeautifulwellness@gmail.com. Can't wait to work with you to walk on this sacred, very important journey of healing towards a life beyond the mother wound, towards a life of love, of abundance, and of joy with you. So send me an email or send me a DM, and we can start working on how to map up your self-mothering journey, which is very important journey, by the way. That is going to set you up for success. That is going to set you up for a great tribe, that is going to set you up for joy and peace in your life. My name is Mushita Dilishomela. I'm a mother wound recovery coach, and I'm also the author of The Girl Who Survived Mother and Radical Acceptance for Childhood Adversities. I am a keynote speaker, and I'm also a designer of the course, the Self-Mothering Care Practice, which is meant to help you navigate your mother wound healing journey by giving you a practice or a map or the tools that you need to learn to nurture yourself back to health. See you next time.